Welcome all to the first edition or greeting meeting of the Smith family reunion. This meeting, I can tell, is kind of a test run for tomorrow. I won't be part of it, but I'm Henry White, and I represent the Salt Lake Stake Presidency. This is our stake center, actually, so it's a pretty nice place. I'm glad we were able to welcome you here and is the sound okay?
We're having them say go up a little.
Okay. I'll just speak a little louder. All right. It's kind of marvelous to see what has come of the beginnings of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. How it just began with the Smith family there in New York and has grown quite a bit. I feel privileged to be here among all you ancestors. I think it's our descendants, there you go, and with great ancestors. But I feel privileged to be here and welcome you all here. We will begin by singing the first verse of The Spirit of God, like a fire's burning. And if you can stand, that would be great. You've probably been sitting for a little while, so it'll be nice to stand and sing that first verse. Our invocation will be given by Gracia Jones, and then we will have a reunion history by Stephen Lawrence Peterson. We'll go to that point.
Our beloved Father who art in heaven, how grateful we are to be able to be together again as relatives and friends of those great ancestors of ours, Father Smith and Mother Smith. And we remember them and feel their presence with us as we have many, many years of reunions behind us, and we hope many more to come in the future. Father, we are grateful that we are all able to be back together here. We pray for those who are participating that Thy Spirit will be with them to help them to say and do those things that they have labored hard to prepare. We pray that thou would bless each person at this reunion, that they will feel that same glorious feeling we felt in the first in 1972, when the theme was the joy of being together, to have the ability to just rejoice in each other as cousins and brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles, grandparents. Father, we thank thee for the miracles that have occurred to bring about these wonderful reunions. We pray now for protection over those who travel in the traffic to get to the various things that are happening here. Bless each one, that they will be blessed with that which they most need to see and feel as they go through this few days that we have. And we humbly ask these blessings and give thanks in the name of the Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Brothers and sisters, it is an honor to be here tonight. You never know in life, do you, what you're going to be able to do, who you'll be able to meet, and what you'll be able to be a part of. Life is a journey. It's amazing. My journey, just in way of explanation, a little over 3 years ago, kind of in that second year of COVID, I was able to, and I promise it was probably because of COVID, I had this opportunity. We, had a lot of things open up because of COVID. I was able to be a missionary, service missionary for the Church History Library, Church History Department, collecting oral histories, and in an amazing journey that I must first of all introduce my colleague and cohort. I don't know where she is. Shirley, are you here in the room somewhere? She might be downstairs. Sister Shirley Cox, Dr. Shirley E. Cox, who is a very well-known, prominent founder of the National Advisory Board of Social Workers. We had this amazing journey. We came in under this, what they called Influencers Project. I can never really understand this word influencers in our culture, because that can be for good or bad, I think. But in this case, it led us to first of all, a person, my background, I'm just going to read to you a little bit here, and I hate to read too much, but I need to, here and there. I have worked several decades in the film industry. I am primarily a visual artist, an impressionist painter. I'm an historian and documentary filmmaker at heart. I have interviewed everyone from golden era movie stars, authors and filmmakers, to Latter-day Saint church leaders and our wonderful Trappist monks to the north, who for 70 years had a monastery in Huntsville, Utah. So I would kind of like to say I've interviewed people from monks to movie stars. Anyway, so this journey, I never could have imagined it would take me and Sister Cox on this journey that would start through a friend of mine I've known for a long time, Margot Watson Jensen. Did I get that right? I got it backwards. Margot Jensen Watson. Some of you know Margot as a singer, performer. She has performed in past reunions back in the days when Buddy Young-Green was involved. She kept saying, speaking of Buddy, she kept saying, Steve, you need to interview Buddy Young-Green. Well, on my mission in Kirtland, in Ohio, back when Carl Anderson was probably in 81 or 2, you were area rep or something like that. So Carl and I know him a lot better than he knows me, but I was in Kirtland and I would hear him talking with our mission president about properties in Kirtland. So this is a full circle moment over 40 years later to be here with Carl. Anyway, so we were led to Buddy Younggreen on an October day in 2021. Buddy Younggreen, at 82 years old, looking casual, sharp in his pressed Hawaiian shirt and crisp blue jeans, began to tell us his story. We would quickly find out that Buddy's story really was about his passion for the Smith family that began as he's a playwright. He still is. He just finished a screenplay on a love story on Joseph and Emma. And he got interested in the history. And I'm going to read a quote from Joseph Fielding Patrick, Francis's father. He says, in 1971, I received a phone call from a young man by the name of Buddy Younggreen. Who is Buddy Younggreen? Buddy introduced himself and then asked, what would you think of having a family reunion of the descendants of Joseph Smith Sr. in Nauvoo, Illinois? My immediate response was very positive, and I said that I would pose the question to my mother, Edith Eleanor Smith Patrick. Mother is a daughter of President Joseph F. Smith, who is a son of Hiram Smith. When I posed the question to Mother, her reply was, it will never work. Well, I think they're wrong, right? I asked her if she would listen to Buddy present his idea to her himself, and she agreed. After hearing his story, Mother said, I think it will work. I then called Uncle Willard R. Smith, and his first response was exactly the same as Mother's. It will never work. Again, I arranged for Buddy to tell his story. Buddy, Mother, and I went to Uncle Willard's, who then said, I think it will work, and I think I must be part of it. Suzanne, your grandfather. So in the limited time I have to really talk about this, there really isn't adequate time. So really to share the whole history here, but how many, just in curiosity, how many of you here tonight were in the 1972, that first reunion? Can you raise your hand? Wow. Okay, so there were quite a few of you. So, and I would really encourage you to write down those histories and let's get all of this history, because as we know, this was an incredible coming together. I was really struggling by what I could say tonight and the amount of time I have. And Buddy said, this is a quote from Buddy, I re-interviewed him about a month ago, and it took 2 hours for him to explain this first couple of years, and actually the 10 years preceding all of this. And Buddy said, the family voted to give their support to the reunion, which became my objective from that point until August of 1972. I would go to the heads of smaller Smith family organizations to get their endorsements in this reunion and their physical support by a promise to attend. Gracia, she sent me a text this week. She knew I was struggling and I had asked her for some advice, and she said the other night, as I assembled this collection for you, I've been aided by a special spirit. I'm still so jet lagged, I'm barely alive, but this was important. So I really appreciated her help. And in the text, she said regarding 1972 in June, and you were about 6 months or 7 months at that point, expecting David, who was here tonight. She said, if you knew me back then, you'd be astonished because I drove to Salt Lake City by myself to meet about this project. I got to Banifal at 5:30 p.m. The traffic terrified me. I pulled into Banifal and found the Patrick's home by a miracle. They took me in their arms and calmed my fright. Joseph advised me to stay till morning and go to Buddy's the next day. That night, Joseph and I talked about the idea, the concerns about Buddy. Was he trustworthy, etc.? Joseph Patrick had a strong feeling this was inspired. We talked a long time, had a prayer together. And I know that's so long ago. And But in this journey that we've had with the Church History Library and the time that we have spent collecting interviews, first of all with Buddy, and we've spent many hours with him, but it led us to so many, several of you, over a dozen of you, and you know who you are. And it's really been an amazing experience. But Buddy, this was what, he said at one point in the late 60s, early 70s, 70 to 71, I had interviewed about 200 to 300 descendants of Joseph and Emma. Joseph III, Alexander Hale Smith, and David Hiram Smith. I mean, can you imagine all that work, that legwork over a decade of the interest, but traveling everywhere? And the thing that's so profound are the stories that he was collecting, the people he was meeting, and preparing for this event, for this coming together. But Gracia said, Buddy Young Green was to become the catalytic force whose personal dedication and genuine love for all members of every branch of the Smith family will eternally shine as an example for us all. From home to home, across the whole country, Buddy gathered into his portfolio pictures, stories, and family data necessary for the organization of a family reunion. In that process, there were signatures that were gathered. There was a trip made where Wallace W. Smith, Willard Richard Smith, and Joseph Byram Smith from the Samuel family. Bob, that's your father, right? Grandfather, that would be your grandfather. Okay. They were there, and I think this is significant because this was an effort, because sometimes we forget what happened, the animosity, the differences between, what happened in Nauvoo. This history is so unparalleled in really in American history. The Joseph Smith Sr., Lucy Mack Smith family, and these events that have been magnified by how the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, how big it is now, this history, but also the colonization, all of the things that happened. Your family, your great-great-great-grandparents were such a big part of fostering the growth that would happen in America and other places. It's really profound. It's really amazing. So there's a lot of history, and I would really encourage you. There are so many of you here, several of you that I've collected, Shirley and I collected your stories, and I'm always amazed, and I really encourage people to really remember your own story. Don't let it get lost in this bigger story. During this reunion, I would really encourage you to get to know people here that you don't know. How many here in the audience are here for the first time? I'm just curious. Okay, so you have a lot of new people to meet. Gracia said, another thing she shared, the whole idea was to bring the family together without religious or controversial issues entering in. How well I remember the hours of planning, choosing the right speakers, selecting topics, a film prepared to lay before the family a glimpse of the personalities, hopes, and dreams of Joseph Smith Sr. and his wife Lucy. Everything was planned with one goal in mind, to spark a common bond which would overshadow all the differences, to unite the family in a loving relationship. You can go into the website of the family that Francis and Stephen have put together. And one thing that Buddy did while he was president, there was always a newsletter. There was so much documentation that is available for you to research. Those of you who don't know this history, please go to the family site. And also, like I said, we will be presenting more. One thing I want to share is this story of what happened at the end of the reunion in Nauvoo. So much happened, but Gracia continued her story on the bus. By the time the bus, I'm just going to read this. Joseph Fielding Patrick's, this is from Buddy. He says, Joseph Fielding Patrick's first assignment that really brought us on and he took on himself, he chartered 2 buses from Greyhound that would convey family members. Over 100 people who wanted to go to this reunion in Nauvoo in August of 1972, 126 years from the time the family had divided in 1846. And Joseph Fielding Patrick. Gracia Denning, a direct descendant of the prophet Joseph Smith, was a member of our bus group, and she was great with child. While in Liberty, Gracia was given a blessing by Uncle J. Winter Smith, a descendant of Samuel H. Smith, and so was her son Paul on the bus. Frances Orton remembers, I also remember the group on the bus taking turns at the microphone and sharing fun stories. Some of those stories related to our family history. Some of those stories were simply fun experiences that happened to the one sharing. We sang hymns. We heard the testimonies of others. We prayed together when Gracia was in labor and the bus was trying to hurry and get her to safety. Our journey back was hotter, and Gracia says, our journey back was hotter and longer than going. Many of the aged on the bus suffered real discomfort, and one very pregnant lady, namely me, wondered very positively if she should have stayed home. Shortly after our bus arrived in Salt Lake City, I went to the hospital and gave birth to a beautiful baby boy. Now, it's interesting because she has explained to me that had she not had David, it was important she had complications. And in God's design and maneuverings, she was at LDS Hospital in Salt Lake City and had the best doctor at the time who could make this possible. So I'm going to close. The definition of a reunion is, the act or process of being brought together again as a unified whole, as in the reunion of East and West Germany. And as you think about the history, I really thought it's no different. The differences were really great. And what we have here now, I in closing, just want to refer to the beginning and way back in the beginning of the Smith family history and the loss of Alvin. I feel that Alvin and losing Alvin was the first separation, the first loss for the family, and that continued on. And now we have a bringing together, and we have another descendant who came as a result. We have the tragedy, there was so much loss and coming together. I just have to close by this article in the Provo Herald, August 29th, 1972, by Mildred Ball. A baby believed to be the first direct descendant of Joseph Smith Jr., ever born in Utah, was delivered at a Salt Lake hospital last week after a race with the stork across the plains from Nauvoo, Illinois. And here he is. I love you all. I'm so honored by this opportunity. Keep it up, keep your stories going, research your history, share and talk with each other. And I say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Greetings. We do have on the back behind me is a PowerPoint. And there's a QR code. You can join the session and then you can input this. But there's also on that same environment, and that's her grandchild. So it's hers, yeah. There is a question and answer place where you can ask questions, and that way it'll be a great place if you're like, I'm stuck or something like that. We will someday get around to answering it, but it might be after the reunion.
Okay, so every year we try to put together a list so that you can see where you all have come from. And to save time, we're not going to go list each of the states. Are you moving to that slide? But I want you to see it, and I will post a history of this afterwards. I hope you will go to the website and try to look through the different histories that are available there. But we have a total of 627 before today. I mean, there were some that registered, and I don't have that number.
How many?
A lot. Okay, so we'll have to update that number as well.
627 plus a lot.
And I will go, am I blocking that? Okay, I will do a breakdown. We usually would have everyone stand and we'd break it down more, but we have too big a group, so we're gonna go through this fast. We have 4 here from Asel Smith cousins, and am I doing each category?
Just
474 Hiram descendants.
486.
Oh, 486 now. Joseph Smith Jr., 51, and 1 that just added. And then Samuel Harrison Smith has 38 from our Smith line. This year, we weren't able to get any from Lucy or Catherine, and we now know of Don Carlos descendants in California, but they aren't currently here either. I wanted to let you know that we have some books that were given to us in honor of Joseph and Emma's 200th wedding anniversary, which takes place January 18th, 2027. Buddy and the woman who wrote the book, their love story is, they needed to move some books, and Desert Book was going to take them, but they wanted to gift them to the family here. We wanted it to go to the Joseph Jr. family. Make sure you each get a copy of each of those, and then the rest of you are welcome to go and get those copies. So make sure you don't leave without checking that. That's just across from the registration. And that's nice of them to do that for everybody. Some of you may wonder why your descendancy may be different than what you put on the record as you registered for the reunion, and I wanted to explain that. If you are a spouse here tonight, how many spouses are here? I had so many spouses say non-family member. And I want to point out that I changed them because if you're married into this family, you are a Smith family member. There are no halves, there are no steps or any of that. If you married into this family, you're a Smith family member. And I dare any of you, when you pass from this life into the next, to go up to Lucy Mack Smith and tell her she's not a Smith. You know, that would go for Emma Smith or Jerusha Barden Smith. They are all Smiths. So I just wanted to point out that's why we made a change on the name tags. We tried to do the best we could, and we just hope you're going to all have fun. Did you have? We wanted to point out we have 2 international visitors. Are you out there tonight, raising their hands? 2 Canadians back there.
Hey.
And when we're running down that? No, just this. So we have 131 attendees from out of state. All you from out of state, stand up. We have a little thing. We're going to have some boys run around to you. So everyone from out of state, stand up and keep standing until you get your little Utah truffle. Okay.
And we also want to recognize the person who traveled the furthest, which we believe is New Hampshire. Anybody further than New Hampshire? Anyway, we wanted to say hi to them. We also want to point out the youngest. Any child here younger than April 15th, 2024?
No one is younger than that.
If you're younger, please speak up. And the reason why we're doing this award-winning category, because it's our granddaughter.
Right there.
Anyone older than 91 years old?
John Smith.
Anyone else?
Is anyone else older than 91?
Oh, somebody over here.
How old? Okay, so you two stand. We have a box of chocolates for you.
And she'll take them.
Yes.
Thank
Also-
you. Thank you for coming, John and Gwen. And the older gentleman in the back.
Can't see from here. We had one person we want to recognize as being the first to register for the reunion. We had just not even officially gone live. We had just started working with this online, and the first person to register was Carol Quinn. Carol, where are you? We need one to go to Carol.
So she almost broke the system. We were trying it out, and she goes in and registers. We also want to recognize registrations from 4 generations, and there may be others here that are this case, but we'll point out one of them. Dan Larson,
Want to stand, Dan?
Eric Larson, Ty, Cody will have to stand in Ty's place. And then,
Okay.
and your grandson, say that name. Keithley.
Keithley.
Baby
Okay,
K.
that is easier.
Baby K. Is he younger than April? Anyway, he's 2.
So do we have others where we have 4 generations here?
Oh,
Okay.
nice.
I need to get your names before so that I can track that in our record, okay?
All right, next.
So I just wanted to say, after I was talking about you all challenging Lucy when you crossed to the other side, the Smith family was the core family of the Restoration, and the prophet Joseph's work wouldn't have happened without his family. It became a family responsibility, and they also shared in the events. They suffered persecution, abuse, imprisonment, and even death, and all these seemed to strengthen their testimonies. And I just wanted to make mention, the Smith family has a little booklet of testimonies that Carl Anderson put together and that was presented during our Moroni Day and Solomon Mack gatherings in September. If you go online, you can find those, and that's something you can print off for your family. So it has each of the children of Joseph Smith Sr. and Lucy Mack. So please go and find those. And one of the best ways to get to know your cousins is to work together, just like Joseph Smith Sr. and Lucy Mack did. So I have some housekeeping, and we're going to try to do this really fast, but we need to do our part in cleaning up after ourselves. After every meeting, we're going to all work together and help pick up and not leave anything behind. We're going to respect all rules at the museum and the library, and parents need to monitor your children. This is a very unique opportunity they have given our family, and they have bent over backwards to work with us. And we know we couldn't get everyone into the library tours because they had a limited number, and we already had to spread it out throughout the whole day. So if any of you find you can't fill your time slot, please let me know, because I do have people who would like to take your place if you can't be there. At the museum, we're going to start at 9 in the morning. This group has doubled since we started working with the museum. This is a little overwhelming to them because the room that has the artifacts recently acquired only holds 45 people. And then we're going to have Gary and Elizabeth Smith speak to us in the basement, and that only holds 190. So Steve put together a rotation, and if you look on your name tag, there's a little number. And if you can follow as much as possible that rotation schedule, our hope is in that hour, you have a chance to gather as a family and go single file up through your assigned places to begin with. And you should all have a chance to get everything. And I don't want you to panic about missing Gary's stuff. He generously gave us his information, and we've posted it online so you can go and read that. And so you're going to file through. You're not going to sit and visit with anyone. You're not going to take any pictures. But after 10 o'clock, you're welcome to go back and stay as long as you want. Take as many pictures without flash. as you want, but we need to be really cautious to be kind and follow all rules when we're there, because we are a huge group, and they're really working for us. Is that it?
There is a lot of you that do not have a secret number on your name tag, and we call that group number 8. And actually, if you don't have that number on your name tag, you are part of the numberless choirs of angels. Numberless, and we can count on you. But the 8, that's group number 8. And we bunched you in rotation, but there's now way too many. If you want to see Gary and Elizabeth, there will be standing room, but the last session, there was a little more room. So be patient with us and kind to us.
Also, Temple Square has tours every half hour at the Tabernacle and the Conference Center. So that's something you can fill your time with waiting between the museum and the time you've signed up to see the library. And I also want to take a minute and just thank Colleen Okeson and Rhonda Thompson for helping us with our music. Colleen is our pianist and Rhonda is our chorister.
So we're going to go through a couple of slides about our past reunions. This is in 2007, and it's Mike Kennedy, and he's looking at Bob Smith and another Bob Smith, and is kind of confused about their name tags. But it's something that runs in the Kennedy family because he's Mike Kennedy, and then his son is Mike Kennedy. So go figure. We put in some trees up at Heber Valley Camp. And then we also honored Eldred G. Smith for his 100th birthday. And if any of you have a 100th birthday on our reunions, we'll do one for you. And in 2007, we also were able to get this shot, our last and ever. And these people are practicing Karate Kid moves. 2009, we actually worked on the cemetery in Nauvoo. And one thing that I've read on Joseph and Hiram is like they talk about how strong faith is. And if you look in this picture, this is Bob Park holding that
Chisel.
chisel. Is that a chisel?
Oh, it's
A gadget?
drill bit.
Drill bit.
Star drill bit.
But if you look at him, look how much faith he has. Over there's a kid with a sledgehammer. Not such great faith, Bob.
We did markers at a girls' camp in Ohio as one of our service projects.
Then in 2012, we went back up to the Heber Valley camp and planted trees that would work. The trees were eaten by deer, and plus they were planted incorrectly. We learned some lessons about arborism or whatever it's called. But we are much more smarter now. But it's beautiful. We have this plaque up there. It's in honor of every Smith family member. In 2013, we had a unique opportunity. We ran a 5K race to honor Dr. Nathan Smith, who started Dartmouth Medical School. He did the leg surgery on Joseph Smith's leg when Joseph Smith was 7 years old. That same surgery never happened until 100 years later. It was not practiced. It wasn't even practiced during World War I, or until the World War I. Here's Elder Ballard marking that race. And then one of our favorite photos of the group. We're going to skip over this question, but think about how many Smith reunions have you been to? We already had, just raise your hand on that. We've had 28.
28 total reunions.
28 total reunions. And And here's our friend Lachlan Mackay, and we love Locke. We also gave some shoes to a group in Independence, Missouri. And it's kind of a shelter, and it was just a beautiful experience. And there's our photo, and there's some frogs that turn into princesses. And there's Dan Larson finally working. Actually, he
does a lot of work.
He does a lot of work at his office. When he wasn't retired, he would go into his office and have people work for him. Elder Ballard. We love this photo, our grandson here putting in a nail, and then notice the faith of that person. This was one of our favorite projects. We built
100 bunk beds.
100 bunk beds for refugees. We changed the reunion years back in 2013 to be every even year because we were so excited to be in Palmyra, New York for the 200th anniversary.
220. 2020.
2020 would have been the 200th anniversary of the first vision. But then COVID happened. So we did that online, and look at that participation. This was in
2022
in Nauvoo.
50th anniversary year.
And there were two cousins, or one of our favorite photos. Okay, and I just want to talk about our next, our service project this time. We are actually giving 7,000 boxes of macaroni and cheese to the Utah Food Bank. And that is, I think, going to be a fun event. We're going to actually set them up at West High School on Saturday and do some domino games with them and such.
Building.
And then donate them to the Utah Food Bank. We have received in that we ask people to donate money. These are the total number of donations. So we received $1,027 in donations. You can see this small one, which was $2, and then others, there was 150, and then that person came back on and did 150 again. I also, or Francis, we want to show off the transaction ID if you want to hurry and jot that down and see if you can break into the system. Too late. Francis got this donation of $5,000. And that previous donation where we wanted $1,000 is supposed to be a matching donation. We didn't quite match that. We were lacking $4,000. But
they still donated.
But we also want to recognize there's so many people doing so many wonderful things, such as the people that managed all the registration, people that gave the books, people that have been doing so many things. We've had people helping out. We've got a couple people cooking a pig. And it's going to, we've got a group of them, and they are donating their time and their talents and their efforts. And so I do want to recognize that. But talking to our donors who gave us $5,000, and they go, well, you didn't make up the matching donation. So they want you to consider this as a possibility for tomorrow, is look at doing some anonymous altruistic activity. Because the donation of $5,000 is anonymous and it was altruistic in an activity, they would like you to do something similar. And here are some of the ideas they said. Go to lunch and pay for a meal for another person or a group you don't even know. Find a garage sale and agree to purchase an item, and I think bicker and bicker and bicker, and then give them the money and say, I don't want it anyway. Find a person or group that needs service and provide it. Give a worker an enormous tip. Buy a box of donuts for me and then for someone else. And a tray of cookies, some goodies, some veggies, some beverages, and take them to a group. Pay in advance for the meals for several people in a drive-in order or a food place. These are some suggestions. It would be fascinating if you can achieve that matching donation. That's what our donors have asked, is to go out and do something. And we would like you to do that tomorrow. Tomorrow, and we do have open a survey, and you can reply to that survey.
It's
So
anonymous.
It's anonymous. All the activity you put in there is anonymous. So
We won't even know. So you just put it in and we can report back to you some of the projects you may have done.
So we'd like you to consider altruism. It is, I think it would be a wonderful feeling. I predict that would make the spirit of Salt Lake jump, then the spirit of America jump, and then the stock market will jump. Well, you just watch. I don't know. Maybe. Well, that's a little too much pressure. So don't write that down. Erase that. Eradicate that from the recording, please. Okay. I do want to say this. Because of Joseph Smith, we do have the Book of Mormon. And the Book of Mormon, if you read Mosiah 2 through 4, is King Benjamin's address. It was a State of the Union. It is the best State of the Union that's ever been published or stated. And so what I want to say, since COVID, I've listened to the Book of Mormon 23 times on my walk. And this has hit me every time, and it's true. So I want you to know that altruistic is a part of Mosiah chapter 4. Read that tonight. Because all true is stick. This is advice from Yoda about the Book of Mormon. That's how he would say it. The stick is true. All true is stick. Go ahead, Nelson.
Okay, so we're going to now go on to the rest of the program and have a report from Bob Smith and then Michael Kennedy. And after Michael, I think we should probably have everyone. Oh, Michael's first? Michael's going to be first and then Bob. We've switched things around a little. And
Do a break after Michael.
And after Michael, can we take a small break so we can
Technology break.
Technology break. Michael?
I've been gathering since the early 70s all of the descendants of Joseph and then the ancestors of Joseph and Emma. Since then, I've connected with the Joseph Smith Sr. family with all the different branches, and I'm the data steward that binds all that and contain the master record for that. And so I wanted to go through the total number of descendants that each of the branches have. Hiram Smith has over 26,000 descendants, both living and deceased, and this is counting the spouses. Living descendants today, there's just over 23,000 descendants. You can see through Sophronia, there are 10 descendants, none living. Joseph Smith Jr., we have over 2,600 descendants and just over 2,100 that are living today. Samuel, there's 948 descendants and 777 living. And William, 536 descendants, 343 living. Catherine, over 1,000 descendants and 711 living. Don Carlos, 29 descendants, total 13 living. Now, let me quantify that data. That data is the genealogical records that we know of now. You can go to www.josephsmithsr.com to find all the descendants, and if you're not listed down there, you can contact us so that we can update that information. Jared, where are you? Would you stand up for a moment? Jared maintains on Ancestry.com the Hiram descendants, and periodically I contact him. He sends me a file that updates that information. So there you can, if you're a Hiram descendant, you can update your information there. Or you can contact Jared and he'll give you the information to do that. But we want to keep those records safe. Those who, I would say that there's about a 95% accuracy on the information I just gave you of all the records. So the hard part of the other 5% are those that become deceased and those that are newborn. And those where you're having a harder time keeping track of. So thank you.
Just for housekeeping, Samuel H. Smith was blessed by his father and was blessed because his father said that he had always taken care of the needs of the different family members. Well, as a Samuel family, in those slides, we've been doing the family picnic for many, many years. This year, we have no idea as far as if there's any special nutritional needs. So after this, I'll be right there. And if you have you need to have something special, please let me know because it's a pretty standard menu Saturday because we have no kitchen and it was there. But Doug, Stanley, they'll be there all night cooking that pig. And we're grateful for Dan Larson, that decided to help us out a little bit with some more pig because there's a big crowd. So we're looking forward to having you. With that in mind, since there's some people who've never been to a reunion before, for the last 12 years, the Samuel family wanted to find where Samuel was buried. In the cemetery in Nauvoo. And through some really marvelous things, we were able to start what we call I Dig Nauvoo. And we've been doing that for 12 years now. And this last year was really kind of interesting because of the transfer of property. Before, we would just say to Locke Mackay and Kristen, directors of the site, that we wanted to dig Samuel's home or whatever, and they'd say, sure. This year was a little different, and so it took us some, I wouldn't say negotiating, but we had to have our act together. Fortunately, we had already contacted a field school, Western Illinois, and so with this next slide, we just want to express a deep gratitude for Locke and his wife, and also for Ben Pickles and Ryan Salzgeber of the church historian department. Without their help, we would have never been able to get through the lawyers and get everything signed and off. And I'm pleased to announce, in fact, our last reunion, who participated in digging in Hiram's office? And raise your hand. Oh, there's some hands. Well, congratulations, because the Western Illinois Field School finished the project. And so we actually know exactly what that building was like. You can see the outline of the building. You can see how deep they went. Those kids were great. We had like 13, 14 archaeology students that did a fantastic job. Jacob Skousen is a member of the church. He was a professor. The rest of them are not members of any restoration movement, but they were just fantastic, and we had a great time. And so that has been taken care of. Our foundation, I Dig Nauvoo Foundation, paid over almost $10,000 to have other studies done. We looked at Hiram's house. We've also looked at Samuel's house and Wilcox for hopefully future opportunities. So in your tours tomorrow, if you happen to have Ryan or Ben happens to be there, tell them thanks. They were really instrumental in making this happen. 2 years ago at a reunion, we were just finishing the negotiation to be able to purchase 4 acres from the Community of Christ in Camp Nauvoo. That sale has gone through. We now own, which we fondly call Camp Mary Bailey. And that is named after Samuel's wife, who probably could be known as the first person that married her missionary. And so she was a wonderful lady, and she passed away in Nauvoo, and we decided to name the camp after her. So we have a couple of buildings, and which is really, really neat, because we just finished one of the rooms, the Sarah room. Is Dawn here? Dawn Blanchard? Dawn, there you go. You came out, and fortunately his father was a Finnish carpenter, so he had that Finnish carpenter gene in him. Dawn, how much did you pay to stay in Nauvoo? Nothing. He went and served, and he didn't have to pay for anything as far as housing when he was in Nauvoo. That offer is for all of us. We own the property. We have the facility. If you want to come out and help us, come on and help. We want to have a little family reunion. Come out and help and put that as part of your service. And we have on the website some of the things we need to do. For example, right now, see that those logs or timber? That's going to be building Joseph Smith's double log cabin. We had the wonderful opportunity, coincidences if you want to call it, but BYU Capstone team made the blueprints and did the design. We have engineers that are actually licensed in Illinois. The plans have already gone to our builder, and we're waiting to do that. But we have all these logs that was miraculously given to us, enough to build this building twice. And so we're planning on hopefully doing that, building it once at our campsite, and the second time hopefully across the mansion house when the appropriate time and everything works out. We're excited about that. But if you wanted to, for example, if you wanted to help us stack those logs and sort them, come on out. We'd love to have your help. It's a great opportunity. Now, the other thing about this whole thing with Camp Mary Bailey is that with this changeover, for the last 20 years, I've taken care of the food in Nauvoo. We don't have the Nauvoo house anymore. There's no kitchen there anymore. And fortunately, we have a master plan that's already been approved. We're building a kitchen. We're going to call it the Hiram Carriage House, because the place looks kind of like Hiram's Carriage House. And so we're already getting preparations with an amphitheater to be able to house our reunion next time we're in Nauvoo. So we need help. And look on our website, and there'll be a kind of a little blurb or banner of things we want to do. And if you can help out and come out and stay in Nauvoo, we're looking forward to having you. Oh, by the way, on this little slide there, the guy in the pink shirt next to me, Josh, he was the kind of the head of the team. He's a descendant of Hiram. So it was kind of really a special experience for him to be able to finish these plans and get that ready to go. And of course, Robert Porter, a Sarah descendant, he was one that made that model, which was, we just had it right time so we could show those kids, and they went with it. The other thing we've been doing is what's called the Smith Gardens. Now that is really up in the air right now with the changeover. However, the last reunion we put those fences in, and last year we actually put the garden in, and we put a rain garden in. What's interesting is that area now is being used for a theatrical play, or whatever you want to call it, where they have the letters of Joseph and Emma, and people are doing a play, and they have like 200 people. And right now, that fence we put in 2 years ago and that garden is a backdrop for that. And so the local FM wants us to continue. We've got to kind of work through some challenges, but it's a neat thing. Now, there's a byproduct from that Smith Garden, and that is the fact that we have over 10 different varieties of butterflies. But one of the butterflies, in fact, we had 60 that they actually took the caterpillars from and raised them and released them. But we have all these butterflies that come to our site, and it's really neat. Is the monarch butterfly. Do you realize it takes 4 generations of monarch butterflies to go from Mexico up to the Corn Belt, and then to go back to Mexico that same year? In other words, the ones that land in our garden now, the Smith Garden, are 3rd generation butterflies. And they give life to the 4th generation, and that 4th generation goes clear back to Mexico. You know what? There's a message there. Every generation of those butterflies is essential, and for that family of butterflies to return back to their home. We are all important. Each generation has an important responsibility. We have a legacy. I'm grateful to be a part of this family. I know that Father Smith knows each of us, and he is concerned about us. I can testify to that, and I say that in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Well, we try to get... Okay, I'm blocking this while we're trying to fix something. We're going to have Carl Anderson be next, and then we have a musical number by Kimberly Jo Smith, Brian Davis, and Elizabeth Funk, Amazing Grace. And after the musical number, we're going to be turning the time to Dan Larson, who we're going to let you announce what you're doing, right?
It's great to follow Bob Smith when we talk about Nauvoo because we have so many interests there. And I'd like to just give a report on the Smith family cemetery. In the early 1990s, we signed an agreement. We formed a foundation and signed an agreement with Community of Christ Church to maintain the cemetery, first to develop the cemetery, it was literally a weed patch, and we created a family cemetery out of that. And initially, we did that with Eldred Smith, with several others. Craig Fogley, your parents were involved in that, and Dan Larson. And I negotiated with the Community of Christ Church. They own the ground for the cemetery, and we negotiated a contract to build it, to maintain it, and it's in very good condition. President Ballard was laser focused on keeping that cemetery so that Joseph and his father could rise and shake hands on the morning of the first resurrection, not in a weed patch, but a beautiful garden. And that was his desire, and he led that for many years. And so we built it, as you can see, on the banks of the Mississippi River. We carved out a piece of ground that was a cemetery. We fenced it off, and it's next to the homestead, next to the on one side, and then on the other, the red brick store. And then you see we dedicated it on August the 4th of 1991. And you see Wallace Smith, who was president of their church at that time, and Elder Ballard. And it's one of the interesting coincidences of this last year is that both President Ballard and Wallace Smith passed away within months of each other. And I'm sure that on the other side of the veil, they're interested in this continuing the way that it has. You also saw Dan Larson there, along with his sister and other family members. And this is the headstone that honors Joseph, Hiram, and Emma. And this will just show you how beautiful we've maintained it over the years. These are the two graves who we honor with our presence tonight, Lucy Mack Smith and Joseph Sr. Their graves are there to be seen for those who haven't been. And then this is a list of those. This is signage in the cemetery. And there are about 18 direct family members of Joseph Sr. and Lucy Mack Smith, their children. And then the next slide introduces a second project we did, and Dan and I headed this up under the direction of the board, and this was honoring the Mack side of the family. Many of you heard just outside of Boston, we have a cemetery for honoring the Smith side, but in Gilsum, New Hampshire, was a cemetery for Lucy Mack Smith's father, Solomon. His stone was broken, it was in disrepair, and this last year we took on the project of, if you'd move that back one, these are the family graves of the Solomon Smith on the far left, and then his son, Solomon Jr., his wives and descendants. And we also erected a monument to Lucy Mack Smith, Solomon Mack, there you see, with an inscription of what he believed about God loving all men. And then the next one, you see Francis and Steve by the signage for Lucy Mack Smith. Their home was next to the cemetery, and that's where she was born. And so this signage honors her birth there. And then on that date, Dan Adams dedicated the cemetery, And Dan gave a beautiful dedicatory prayer, which is on our website. And we encourage you to go ahead and look at that prayer and the graves. Rick Nelson did a lot of work. He's here tonight. Where are you, Rick? Okay, over on this side. We had many conversations, but it got done. And so this is also done by the Foundation, Joseph Smith Sr., Lucy Mack, and Elder Ballard's son, Craig Ballard, continued in the position of chairman following his father. He's unable to be with us tonight, and he asked to be excused. He's out of town, but he'll be with us tomorrow evening. The one thing I'd like to just testify that as I've gone up there, and Dan and I have made a couple of trips, there's a spirit there in that cemetery honoring the Mack side. We often get a little more publicity for the Smith side, but the Mack side created Lucy Mack, and Frances has talked about her strong personality, and I think she wants us to continue and has strong direction. But grateful to be with you, and grateful that we're able to honor these great ancestors. And I pray that we'll follow in their example. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun.
I'm going to try not to stand in front of the. I'm staying out of it? Okay. And I hope you all can hear me. And I just got a little bit concerned after Carl got through talking. It just seems like all he and I have been doing is working on graveyards. And I keep looking around and seeing if my name's on one of them and said I ought to stay. So, but it's been a pleasure for Carl and I to do that in several places. So I would like to start by introducing my lovely wife, Rosemarie, who's been with me for a while, and my son, Eric, and Cody, who's here now. So, and some dear friends, David and Karen Hall, who learned to know well and really love being with them. and Robin Jensen's friend also, who is here, and Nathan and Melania Bell. I don't know if they were able to make it or not, coming in from California. They are back there. It's great to see you. And Don and Jasmine Bradley is up here. So Don has been working with Joseph on the articles that are being published in the Meridian magazine, which is online. I don't know if people are familiar with that, but that would be the first article that was put out with reference to the project that Joseph and David and I have been working on, which is restoring the lost likeness of Joseph Smith. And I've been coming to the reunions for 27 reunions, a span of 52 years. And my son was 4 or 5 years old. And now he's 26 or 56, one or the other. So, and it's been a real experience to be to every one of them. And I have been up here talking in front of people in every one of them. And the first one I remember, there might have been 60 or 70 of us. There was about 3 of us from the Joseph side, and the rest were from the Hiram side, which might tell you something. So, but that was a great experience. But I have to say that this will be probably one of my most memorable reunions, and probably close to my last. So I probably got a good 10 years left, and that's about it. Then I'm going to have to pass the reins to my son, and when he's done, it'll be to my grandson. So hopefully we're all around here another 100 or so years. And so I'm almost excited about this reunion as I was when I opened up the locket and saw the image of Joseph for the first time, which was just breathtaking. And I'm sure all of you have read about that many a time. And my wife and I opened that up one Saturday morning, and it was just unbelievable, the feeling that we had and the humbleness that we had. I knew right away who it was when I saw it. So then David Hall and myself have been working together with doing some restoration up in the Nauvoo Cemetery for quite a while, became good friends, and we started talking about the locket, and then we decided that we needed to restore the likeness. So we became friends, and we talked a lot about who would be the best person to do that, and we chose Joseph Brickey, and he had the most qualifications to produce the real-life painting of Joseph. And I'll just read a little bit about his accomplishments here. Joseph F. Brickey is an accomplished classical artist who has won multiple international awards in both painting and sculpture. He received a Master of Fine Arts in Sculpture in 2012 from the New York Academy of Art. He studied forensic facial recognition with acclaimed sculpturist Wu Yang Che. He had to spell that out phonetically for me so that I could read it. So, let's see. And has since been honored with the Walter Elderbacker Award for his studies in human anatomy, and for over a decade as he's taught classical and forensic anatomy at the Roque Art Academy, a school of classical art and architecture, where he is currently serving as director. He also serves as president of the Classical Tradition Institute, presiding as an Inspirational Artist Association, and is on the board of directors of the Institute of the Classical Architecture and Art. So we felt that just about put him in line for doing the work that we felt was so close and precious to us. So Joseph did the artwork. Joseph also has done artwork for the church for many years, and actually worked in the temple doing a mural in Rome, Italy, which I think puts him kind of up on the top of the Rome. And so when you see the end product, you'll know why we chose him, and also a strong spiritual feeling that he had about this project himself. It's been many occasions we've sat down and talked about him working through this project, and it really was almost a spiritual work for him and something that he really, really believed in. And that makes a lot of difference to the artist putting that paint on the paper to make it look, canvas, I'm sorry, not paper. So, David and Joseph and myself, we've formed a partnership, LLC, called the New Smith Images, and we have a copyright symbol, NSI 2024. We have a copyright on all the paintings, pictures, sculptures, and articles written by Joseph and Don, the ones that are being published in the Meridian magazine, which is also online. And we will be moving forward in the future with images of Hiram and Emma. And one of the real heartbreaks I had was we were also supposed to have the first sculpture of Joseph done in bronze to have the viewing along with the portrait. But the foundry people, I told them who I was and who Carl was and who Joseph was. They didn't care. They still weren't going to get it done in time. And I started to mention David's, but I thought I'd better not. So we'll be having another showing on Saturday with the artwork and the sculpture that he has over here from 1 to 3:30 when we're having the dinner over there. So there'll be a showing of that again, because we know, I don't think that everybody that's here and down below can probably walk by and have a look at it as close as they would like to. So it will be on exhibition then for everybody to see again. And so with that, I'll introduce Joseph Brickey, close friend, and somebody that I've learned about very much. So I'll turn it all over to him, because I'm sure he'll do a lot better job than what I have. So thank you all very much.
Okay, I am so honored to be here. It has been a sacred honor of my life to be a part of this project and to do this research. I've taken it very seriously. It has been an intense process, very long process, studying the minutia of the evidence we have to make sure everything was on point, that everything could be reviewed and held up to the world for criticism. And it was very important to me that the work be precise and accurate. So I would like to talk a little bit about the work and this amazing daguerreotype that I've been researching for so long. So we can dim the lights so you can see the slides. By the way, I'm holding in my hand one of the forensic models. This model is a not to life scale, but you will see over to the left or to your right these forensic models that show various iterations of the evidence as it's come together. And I'll talk a little bit more about those forensic models and what they have to do with the daguerreotype. So you see on the screen there, this daguerreotype. We know that this daguerreotype was taken in a very small window of time of just about 3 years that it could have been taken based off of its materials and the invention of photography that was so new at the time. Photography came to the United States in about the year 1841. In about 1845 is when the materials changed to a different process. So we know this daguerreotype was taken before 1845 and after 1841 or 42. So very small window that we can date this artifact too, and this man's image. These are images that I grew up with the likeness of Joseph Smith. And you can see there's a few of those that were done at his lifetime or near his lifetime. Some that were done generations afterwards. I know as an artist it's very difficult to depict someone that is so important to so many people, and you have so little visual evidence in order to do that portrait. Portraits are so difficult to begin with. And if you look at what is in common with these depictions, it's probably less the face and more everything else, right? Like we recognize Joseph Smith without the face just because of these other things that we tie to his identity. But we have always had this dilemma in recognizing exactly what his face was from the evidence we had. One of the most important evidences we've had are the two death masks of Joseph and Hiram. Now, something that has become so prominent in my mind as I've done this study is how sacred these evidences are. They tell a story. They tell the story of these men's death and what testimony they left to us. These death masks, it's amazing, number one, everything that was the incalculable fruits of the restoration that were opened up through the life of Joseph and the whole Smith family. But to end their life in martyrdom, what a testimony and legacy they left just that day, June 27th, 1844. And these death masks tell the story of that day. This is one of the skulls that were exhumed when they exhumed the bodies to move their burial to a different place in 1928. And they took photos of this skull and this skull, calling this skull 1 and this skull 2. And in 1928, when they exhumed the remains, they identified this skull as Hiram's skull. And I'll talk a little bit about why. And this one as Joseph's skull. I hope you feel the gravity, again, just like with the death masks, of what we're seeing here, what we're witnessing here. Now, this is all of us in about 100 years. But we have such a precious record to me as an artist in terms of restoring the likeness of Joseph Smith and of Hiram. This is precious evidence. It's also evidence of their martyrdom as well as what their living likeness was. And the job of a forensic anthropologist is to recreate the face from this evidence. So that is my training, and that has been my aim with this study. Now, the death masks, something that was traditionally done in olden times to preserve someone's face after death. And on the deathbed, they would pour plaster on the face in order to create a negative of that face. And then they would pour plaster into that to create a positive of the face. Now, of course, the countenance changes after death. And certainly the faces are not a record of the living likeness as much as just a record of the state of that face when that cast is taken. One of the aspects of a death mask, this is a death mask of Walt Whitman in the center, and you see an artistic depiction of him on the left, and a photo of him on the right, just to get a sense of what that death mask is recording. Now, you may recognize these two men, Johnny Depp on the left and Tom Cruise on the right. These are life masks. So these masks are taken in life. And I hope you can see what a change it is to see a face in the iteration of a mask versus living flesh. In fact, in the modern techniques, they wouldn't have to stuff the nostrils in order for the plaster not to seep in. These are even more accurate masks than would have been taken in 1844. But I hope you can see and appreciate how different a mask is, even a life mask, from the living flesh. This is Julia Roberts' life mask, known for her beauty, and probably if the only record we had of these famous people were their masks, we wouldn't be too impressed with their looks. So I want to just plant that idea as we look at all we have of their three-dimensional face through the death masks. Now, this is a painting I did early on in my career, about 25 years ago. I did a series of paintings of Joseph Smith at the time, and you can see from my study, the drawing on the right, that I'm using the death mask for the likeness. And I didn't appreciate all the changes that I should compensate for that are recorded in the death mask in order to get the living likeness. So I was just kind of copying directly what the death mask was saying. These are other pieces I've done of during this same time period in the late 90s. These were the first major paintings I did as an artist, and this project really opened my eyes to how difficult it was to depict Joseph from the primary sources we have. So a little later, about 10 years later, I decided I wanted to do a bust, and I had just started to get interested in sculpture. And this is actually my first sculpture I did. I was a practicing professional painter at the time, but I wanted to get into sculpture. And so Joseph, in both painting and sculpture, has been my first foray as a subject. Now, at the time I did this, I was in a business partnership, a publishing company, who found this. One of the partners found this image and wanted to promote it as a daguerreotype of Joseph Smith. And they brought it to me to ask what I thought, and I said, I don't think so. But I show this because, and by the way, this was later found to be a different man in the Library of Congress. He's actually identified at the bottom of the photo. But I say this because this is kind of what we've created in our minds of Joseph Smith through different artistic depictions. This is kind of the likeness that has been passed on because we have so little primary evidence of what he looked like. Now, I love these two paintings. We get the opportunity this weekend to see these pieces in person. And what a beautiful pairing of portraits of Joseph and Emma. And really, this painting of Joseph became one of the most authoritative depictions of Joseph that we had over the generations. Back when I was shown this fake daguerreotype, and by the way, there's been numerous other daguerreotypes promoted as possibly of Joseph Smith, I had sort of tired of hearing of these daguerreotypes that could be Joseph Smith that to me looked nothing like Joseph. And so I thought, well, I want to do a real serious portrait of Joseph Smith. And I took this painting, this Nauvoo painting of Joseph Smith, and I thought, I've studied the death mask. I know it doesn't match the proportions of Joseph's face. I would like to tailor the painting, the features of the painting, but move them in like Photoshop to fit this facial structure of the death mask and see what kind of look results. And one of the big changes between the death mask and the painting is the proportion of the lower face. Now, in classical art, there are conventions that artists use that are just sort of like standard ways of proportioning the face. And one of those is that the space between the nose and the mouth is 1/3 of the space between the nose and the chin. And that's just an artistic method that is often just used, especially when you don't have a model. And I noticed that is the convention that is used in this portrait, and perhaps explaining why the artist didn't use the same proportions as the death mask. So you can see a comparison of the lower face from death mask to painting, and you can see how the mouth does not align when you align the nose and the chin. This is me placing the mouth to where the painting, placing the mouth on the death mask to where to match the painting. You see how much of a change that is in proportion. To a forensic artist, every millimeter matters. That much of a change is like a huge change. It's a disqualifying change if you're trying to identify a face. So I overlaid the painting with the death mask, and I came up with this face that fit the death mask, but it was still like using the features of the painting. I thought, I like this look. I think I'll paint it. Well, the beginnings of that portrait sat in my studio until this day. Never finished it. And when I saw the news article on this daguerreotype, when everybody else did, I just saw the headline and I clicked on it, I saw the photo. When I saw the headline, I thought, okay, another daguerreotype. When I saw the photo in the article, I didn't bother reading the article. That's how artists do things. We just look at pictures. And I looked at this photo, and it gave me a double take. Because at first, it was so unexpected. And as I studied it, and started to really study the proportions and things I'd studied with the death mask, I thought, oh my goodness, I'm seeing just with my eye some very peculiar matches that you don't usually find with a death mask. And the more I studied it, the more I thought, this might just be like the best candidate I've ever seen. And what I decided to do was to take that portrait that I had prepared back in 2008 and just do an overlay of the daguerreotype. And what you see on the left is that portrait painting I had never finished. And what you see on the right is the daguerreotype plugged into the painting. And then what you see in the middle is just a 50-50 blend. And you can see that even though there are some portrait differences in features, the facial structure was just a dead-on match. And I was so excited. So I was able to enter into contact with Dan Larson, and then that just began a large journey. And I have grown in my affection for Dan and his commitment to do this right. I so much respect him. I'm so honored to be in this partnership and to co-author this research with Don Bradley, who's just an amazing historian, has an amazing mind. And so in my studies of the skulls, something that I felt was just very undiscovered and just had just not been researched properly was all the information that the skulls give about the face. So this skull one that was first identified as Hiram's skull, it was identified as Hiram's skull, it seems to be from the accounts, the contemporary accounts, because they found the forensic person that was commissioned to exhume the bodies was told that Hiram had been shot in the face and he should look for that evidence in the skull. But he had been given the wrong information, that Hiram was shot on Hiram's right side when it was actually his left side. And so that seems to be the most tangible reason they attributed this skull to Hiram. And you can see they actually wrote a note on the photo there. If you can read that, it says course of bullet. And that shows how much misunderstanding there was about the actual bullet that hit Hiram. Now, in forensic studies, there's something called craniometry, where you measure the cranium and you measure the head. And this is part of the discipline of a forensic artist and a forensic anthropologist, to take very precise measurements and to understand the difference between the skull and the surface layer of the flesh. Now, in my studies, I very quickly saw that the skull 1 that was identified as Hiram's, could not match Hiram's death mask simply because the wound in his face from the ball that struck him and killed him overlapped the nasal bone that is still intact in this skull. And so very early on in my studies, I realized, well, that feels very compelling, and eventually felt just conclusive to me that skull 1 could not be Hiram's. In later studies, I even saw that what this slide is showing on Hiram's left side, those markers that are protruding from his face are measuring this, where the surface is on the right side of his face. In other words, those markers are showing how sunken in the left side of his face is just compared to his right side. More evidence that those bones were broken when the death mask was taken 24 hours after the martyrdom. Now, in measuring the skulls, by the way, these are these forensic models that you'll see at the end here on your right were done from these photographs and were used to match with the death mask to confirm the identity, which was Joseph and which was Hiram's. And this slide is simply showing that when you fit the death masks on skull 1, Joseph's fits like a glove, and Hiram's simply doesn't fit, especially in the lower face. One thing you'll notice with the two death masks is that Joseph's face is taller than Hiram's. And so it becomes very clear when you match the skulls which one matches. So this is skull 2 with the facial bones missing. That, if you ask any forensic pathologist, would be very expected of someone who was shot in the face, that those facial bones would soon deteriorate. Now here's a 3D model of skull number 2 matching the two death masks. You can see how perfectly it matches Hiram's death mask, but doesn't match Joseph's. This slide is showing those tissue depths, and what I marveled at is just how perfectly Joseph's death mask fit skull 1. Now, what you're seeing here is in 1842, there was a science, kind of a pseudoscience, where you would measure the skull, kind of like palm reading, but you would read someone's character or you'd kind of interpret someone based off of these measurements of the skull. And someone measured Joseph Smith's cranium, his head, and we have those 8 measurements. So this is the document documenting those measurements. So those measurements were also used. Here's an old photo of someone taking those measurements of the head. This slide shows some of the changes that we would expect in the death mask versus the living face. And the red is where things would be more swollen or more larger than in life. And the purple is where they would be more shrunken than in life because of the postmortem effects. One of, the nostrils are swollen because you would have to stuff the nostrils with something so that the plaster wouldn't seep in. And that's becomes a very distinctive part of how we read the death mask, is those swollen nostrils. So this is a recreation of the death mask trying to undo those post-mortem effects. So this is what I call Joseph's living mask, trying to undo the effects of death. And you will see one of the models that has the living mask of Joseph and then the living mask of Hiram, undoing just those post-mortem effects in the death mask. So a couple things about the daguerreotype and the process. This is an early daguerreotype of a daguerreotypist taking a picture. And so you get a kind of a sense of the nature of those early cameras. One aspect of a daguerreotype is that it would record the mirror image of whatever it saw. So this is the mirror image of Dan Larson's daguerreotype, and is likely what the camera saw before it recorded the flipped image that we see on the daguerreotype. Now, another aspect of studying the daguerreotype is trying to understand how close the point of view of the camera was, because what this image shows is how different the face looks depending on how close you are to the face. And as you get closer, maybe you notice this with your iPhone, how much your face gets distorted by depth perception and perspectival distortion. So cameras that have these wide-angle lenses, like the 15-millimeter lens, where you have to stand really close to the head, cause a lot of distortion. And you can see between those three versions of the same face how much the proportions of the face change. Here's another version. You can see how much the same face is changing just by the lens or by the camera vantage point. So that was another part of understanding the daguerreotype, is how much distortion, how close is the camera to Joseph when this picture is taken. So we've recreated the distance of the camera, working three-dimensionally with all of this evidence in order to try to recreate what we see in the daguerreotype. Now, one thing I want to say is, for those of you that are Hiram's descendants, and we're hoping this might be Hiram, I've also matched it with Hiram. And by the way, those seem to be the two most likely candidates that this daguerreotype is of, Joseph or Hiram, based off of when it was taken, the fact that it is a Smith family heirloom. What this slide is trying to show you is that in forensics, in order to match a face to something else, what you would do is try to find 2 points as anchor points, and then find what other proportions do when you match 2 anchor points. So let's say you match, in the case of the death mask on the left, this is both Hiram's death mask, where I'm sizing it on the left side to the eyes and to the mouth, or to the nose, sorry. So if you match the end of the nose with, say, the corner of the eyes, where is the mouth? Well, Hiram, if you look at the death mask, is actually quite obvious. Hiram has a very short distance between nose and mouth versus Joseph's. And so if you match the nose and eyes together, the mouth is just too short. If you match the mouth and nose, or mouth and eyes of Hiram, then the nose is too low, which is what is showing on the right side of that slide. So Hiram's face just can't match the daguerreotype, especially just because of that main thing. There are other reasons as you get more specific in the detail, but that's probably the most obvious reason that Hiram does not match the daguerreotype, because of that proportion of his lower face that is so different from Joseph's. So here is matching the daguerreotype to Joseph's death mask. And it's a match everywhere in terms of structure. And to get an idea of how close is a match, forensically, well, I don't see anyone just with my eye judging. I don't see anyone in here who's going to match the daguerreotype or the death mask. We have quite unique faces. Even structurally, we're quite unique. And in some ways, your face is like the fingerprint of your head. I guess your fingerprint is the face of your hand, I should say. But this forensic study is to match skull to death mask, and then to see if those align with the daguerreotype. That is many, many points in three-dimensional space that are aligning. And so from skull to death mask to daguerreotype, I have just found the daguerreotype fits like a glove to things we know are Joseph. So how conclusive can I be in my research that the daguerreotype is of Joseph? Well, all I can say is the face matches. And to me, it matches at such a level that I have just marveled at what a treasure we have in this daguerreotype. So what we're going to do, what is behind this blanket is not a big biography, a big book. That's the size of the book that Don is going to write on all this study, but it's actually a frame of a painting in a frame that we're going to unveil, which is, by the way, you are the first to see it. Now, I'm going to tell you that Dan Larson was so adamant that this be ready for this occasion, because this is really a family affair. And I have seen how much this means to him and how much you mean to him, that you get the first view. This is the sneakiest peek of this painting. And I have worked night and day trying to be ready for this event tonight, because I knew that this was so important that you be the first to see just the beginnings of our studies, because like Dan mentioned, there will be sculptures, there will be different iterations, both of Joseph, but also of Hiram and Emma, as we try to be as true as we can to their likenesses.
I would just like to say a quick thing. This is a accumulation of 4.5 years of work that I've had many people work with me and spent $1 or $2 on it. 4.5 years I've been working on this thing, since the moment that Rosemary and I opened that thing up to this here. And that's why I'm so pleased to unveil this with Joseph.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, you're welcome to come up. You're welcome to look at the forensic models. Let me just explain what you'll see to the right. So the two models on the end are of Hiram. So what you'll notice on the one of Hiram to the left is I've indicated the bullet hole that enters his face, and you can see inside of that hole where his nasal bone is. And I use the skull one's nasal bone to show that would be hit by the bullet. So you can see that in the first model of Hiram. The second Hiram model is me recreating his face, taking away the postmortem effects in the death mask. So then the models of Joseph, you see the same thing. The model on the left the furthest to the left of Joseph is that skull one matching the death mask. the skull as it was photographed in 1928, then a restoration of the skull and the restoration of his mask to the living mask. And then the next one is his full head on one half of the model, so you can see that in context with the skull. So you can look at those. I have spent countless months with these and have tried to be as true as I could to all of the evidence. And I hope you feel that these are artifacts and records of these two noble men from a moment, their worst moment of martyrdom, but everything we can recreate to understand their living likeness. You will notice the copyright of New Smith Images, NSI. That's just a reminder that we haven't released these images. We want to be very careful in the release of these images. So we ask you to just respect, not share your images, and we will be releasing these images to the masses. But we wanted to show this to you first. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Real quick, the spots that we were aware of opening have been filled. And group one will start in the basement with Gary and Elizabeth at 9.
Yeah, you do have those assignments. It's actually group 1 and group 2, but group 1 moves first and then group 2 follows. And so please do that quickly. Group 8, you're also invited, but be aware that it is overfilled. So if you can stand or go to the last session, you'll be fine. We'll have one verse of the closing hymn, Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing. It's not in the hymn books, but it's hymn number 1001 online. So anyway, you should have it memorized by now anyway. And then the benediction will be offered by Rick Nelson.
Our kind Father in heaven, we are grateful this night with gratitude in our hearts for the heritage which we have, for faithful ancestors who have left a legacy for us. We're grateful, Father, for Father and Mother Smith, the example that they set for us, and what we feel because of them and the things that they have done. We're grateful, Father, for the ties that bind us together as a family and for what we have learned tonight about that family. We ask Thee at this time to help us be kind and generous and build lasting bonds of friendship and family throughout this reunion that will last the rest of our lives and through eternity. We are grateful, Father, for all these many blessings. Wilt thou see us safely to our homes and places of rest tonight so that we may continue on the morrow our reunion and learn from each other to be more worthy of the blessings thou hast reserved for those that are faithful. We're grateful for the gospel of Jesus Christ, thankful for his sacrifice, and pray that all that we might do, in all that we do, we might be mindful of him. And this we ask in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.